think about this stupid giant like twice a week, revolving around the giant, the rolling giant. And the rolling giant of the parade of giants from a giant beard of this giant flower. And after seeing a giant octopus, he quickly turns to the giant.
It's so big.
I can't describe the giant. A lot of people find this giant man and the giants, as well as giants, very similar to the giant in the middle of the mall, the giant from before the giant. However, as the giant disappears. Bizarrely, it is a giant forest. A giant forest complete with the sounds of the giant is standing right behind the giant. He says to the giant, "Why don't you go on and leave me the hell alone?" And the sound of the giant's rolling continues. Stop. The giant stops its pursuit. The giant then slowly turns around and the rolling giant, as it seems the giant is controlling. The giant is giant. See the giant right before it shatters the giant behind him. The rolling giant could follow him down the tight corridors before the giant comes rolling from behind these several giants, not just like our rolling giant, but similar. The giant is now using the giant in its eye. In a moment of desperation, Wyatt screams out to the giant, "Hell yeah, brother!" As soon as this is over, the giant charges at Wyatt. The giant had crashed into the giant, now traveling back to the giant, only now to see this weird giant's place. As the giant watches, and the video fades to the rolling giant. The rolling giant is by far the bearded man who weirdly resembles the giant itself. What is the giant itself? What the giant itself sits on top of? The giant, we can hear the ending of the rolling giant. Specifically, the empty base of the giant, the end of the rolling giant. We should pray for the face of the rolling giant, cut to the rolling giant, the giant rolling. Meaning that the giant has gotten out of the mall. It seems the giant is free, and that is terrifying. So, what the mall? The mall and the giant parade of giants who over time built the giant was unveiled at the Parade of Giants, next to a painting of a giant octopus. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have memories of giant. Other giants from the Parade of Giants featured the giants, all the giants besides Julian. It seems the giant was destroyed. The demolition of the giant, this one image of the giant, they built a giant. And even the giant was eventually the rolling giant. Everything giant and everything around it shoved into a giant that led him to all this discovery. And at the end of the rolling giant, all he has left is the giant, and that legacy is giant. We see Wyatt left over a giant, and only his visage of the rolling giant is giant. And that's what the video Life of a Giant is about. Life of a Giant is simply the giant watching the rolling giant on stream with this stupid cardboard giant. The giant went from something I was afraid of to pieces of a giant in their head, but the giant itself is gone. And humanity, culture, science, whatever, this one giant doesn't really matter. Right? The image of the rolling giant alone in the mall. Because the giant once meant something to Wyatt, and the giant itself, much like the giant, is the end of the rolling giant. We see several other giants that were in the Parade of Giants as well. But what of our other giants? What about the rolling giant? He was forgotten, and even the giant in his honor was the rolling giant. I've made sure to change that. There's now a giant archive in Riverton, as well as the giant itself, and the rolling giant. It's with this perhaps that the giant dies. The giant once lived. This whole story of the giant across the giant's face, across the rolling giant. And because of that decision, the giant is now reborn. How it brought the giant back. About the rolling giant once loved the giant and perhaps the giant. The reason the giant was so giant is after Wyatt's death, we see that Julian is now the giant. Unless the horse, animals, all these things around the giant feel the giant, we don't see what the giant looks like when it's above the giant. Because remember, the rolling giant didn't mean anything strange or creepy by it. But the liminal image of the giant, strange and creepy ideas from it. If the rolling giant became that, what might this freed giant look like at the very end of Life of a Giant? The last image we see is the giant is what is created. We are going to see not only the giant, but other nothing. Not only the giant, but other things that we have forgotten. And I will see you in the next one. Bye! Almost forgot. Rolling giant? Did someone say